By now, the TinyHawk franchise, or just the Hawk franchise, is pretty well known. They've come out with a bunch of really cool products, and this is the latest iteration on the TinyHawk variation of their products. And so the original TinyHawk, when it came out, was an amazing little quad. It had incredible performance, and it was remarkably durable for what it was. But of course, with everything, people gave it more and more punishment, and it did start breaking. And I bring that up because the most significant upgrade here, I would say, is actually the frame. They redesigned the entire frame, and I have put this thing through quite a bit of punishment, and I have not broken any parts of the frame. It's made of the same plastic, and it really has held up really, really well. I'll talk more about the frame and the setup in a minute, but let's go over the rest of the quad. I believe the drivetrain is pretty much the same as the TinyHawk 2S. It has 0802 motors, I think 15 or 16,000 kV. It's made for 1S and 2S. The flight controller board is pretty much the same with some updates, I believe. There is a little cap in there, which helps with 1S and 2S. And something you may notice is that the motor wires are actually soldered on to the flight control board, which is fantastic because that really does help improve the current flow to the motors, and it does help improve everything about the quad when you have a really good, solid, secure connection. The flight controller still has the connectors for the motors, and you can buy the old motors and just plug them in, but they have gone ahead and soldered them on. And thankfully, they are using a real camera in here. This is the Runcam Nano 2, so the picture that you get out of this thing is notably better than the Emax camera. And you won't have the camera popping in and out because it has screw holes that are mounted properly in this thing, and it has this really cool rocket boy or rocket whatever appearance to the camera casing. Everything about this quad is remarkably durable. It really does hold up to a whole lot of punishment. One thing I would note as a negative is that the VTX in this thing, if you're not using some sort of a rapid fire or switching kind of module, you get these like white flickers and flashes, which are a little bit annoying, and maybe I just notice them, but if you do use some sort of rapid fire module, it's perfect picture with no issues at all. Also, another thing is that the Runcam Nano 3 is on the cusp of coming out if it hasn't already come out, and that would be a really nice upgrade to this quad because it will save you about 3 grams. Now, this is not a super light, super whoop kind of quad, but everything this small benefits from losing a couple grams. So it would be a nice benefit to just drop those couple grams. Now, talking about the performance, something that is really weird is that it didn't come with this XC30 connector. I actually put this XC30 connector on. It actually came with a PH2 connector, which is kind of still fine for 1S, except for the fact that it's not that fine for 1S. And to add insult to injury, the actual PH2 connector that it comes with is the rolled pin kind. It's not the solid pin kind. On the previous TinyHawk 2S, they actually came with the solid pin kind, and I don't know why they went back to the rolled pin, but even with that rolled pin, on 1S, this thing is great. It's totally fine. On 2S, I wouldn't actually even recommend using the 300 milliamp 2S battery that it comes with, which I didn't bring out here to show you, but it just doesn't, the voltage doesn't hold up. You get less than a minute of flight time, and it's just not that fantastic. And on top of that, I don't even like this quad on 2S. I don't think it's that great of a performer on 2S. Of course, it has plenty of speed, plenty of performance, and I'll talk about that with this connector in a minute, but it doesn't, it's an overweight whoop for 2S, but it has the 2S ability if you want that crazy outdoor speed. Now, talking about the performance, something else I forgot to mention is that it does have LEDs in the guards here, so it's cool that it does light up. So talking about the performance, something that I want to point out about the general TinyHawk line of quads is that the people don't appreciate enough the fact that it's built upside down as a pusher quad, and that really does make a very significant difference. If you look at how a traditional quad is built or a traditional whoop is built, you have the battery that's hung really down low compared to the motors and the flight controller and everything on top. So your weight distribution is really spread out over everything, over the height, over the z-axis. It's really spread out up and down. When you look at this thing, the battery slings right under the flight controller, and the motors are right about at the same level. So you have a really, really condensed z-axis weight distribution, and that makes for something that handles really remarkably well. And that's what was special about the original TinyHawk that people didn't really appreciate enough. But I'm going to point out again here because there's a lot of products in this category at this point, and you have a lot of choices. And I'm not saying one is necessarily better than the other, but this particular product on 1S with the weight distribution that it has in its pusher configuration is remarkably easy to fly. It's really smooth, really nice to fly, especially with Betaflight 4.1 that it comes with built in already. It really does perform really nicely. Now, like I said, I don't really like it on 2S because it becomes this super powerful, super crazy, kind of overweight whoop thing, and I'll show it to you on 2S with the XT30 connector. And the 2S battery that I'm running here is a regular GMB 450 2S battery. It performs really great on 2S. It doesn't quite have the same kick and punch as like a open prop quad with larger props, but hey, it performs amazing for a whoop on 2S. Again, I don't really recommend running it on 2S because it's not as fun to fly in my opinion, but if you want that power, you get that power on the 2S. Now, another thing about the PH2 connector and the XT30 connector, there is another connector, the BT2 connector, which is a battery here that I brought out, has a BT2 connector on it. And something really interesting that I have recently discovered about the BT2 connector is that on higher amp draw 1S quads, going with a XT30 connector over the BT2 connector still gives you significantly more performance than the BT2 connector. Now, I was not expecting that at all because the XT30 pairing of connectors, the male and female, comes at about a 1.1 gram handicap over this BT2 connector. And if you look at the pins and the engineering on this connector, it actually does look quite nice. The pins really hug each other really nicely, and you get nice intimate contact with nice gold-plated pins. Whether it's gold or not, who knows, but it looks nice at least. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. I think this quad is most suitable with an XT30 connector. However, if you're going to be running it on 1S pretty much exclusively, keep the PH2 connector so that you can use the charger that it comes with, as well as the plethora of 1S travel chargers that are available on the market, because that just makes it really convenient to fly. You do lose a tiny bit of performance on 1S with the PH2 connector versus an XT30 or a BT2 connector. You also lose a little bit of flight time, but it's not a huge significant factor. I want to say primarily because of the weight distribution of this quad. With less power, you still feel like you have really nice performance and really nice handling and really nice power because the quad is set up really nicely, and the flight controller and the system doesn't have to work as hard to keep the attitude where it is. Now, like I said earlier as well, a really nice upgrade to this would be the RunCam 3, and I would highly recommend the RunCam Nano 3 because it is really nice. I just don't know how it would mount to this thing. I'm sure people make tons of different mounts to mount to this thing. Hope that was helpful, informational. Take care, floss your teeth, keep watching. There's lots of things I'm working on. I know I've just been slow on the videos lately, but I promise there's a lot of things coming. Bye.